Greetings! I am once again Matt, the Solo Gamer, and today we're doing something a little special. I happen to have recently added another piece to my retro gaming collection. What you're looking at now is the screen for the system known as the Polymega. And I have recently acquired the adapter module for the Super Nintendo. So what does that mean? Well, as you can see, I've already got quite the collection of Saturn, PlayStation, and other such games installed and ready to roll on my system. I've also recently added and updated a memory card and properly mounted it. Now the system runs smooth as butter. So what does that mean? Well, as you can see, I have what looks like a Super Famicom Sailor Moon themed beat 'em up loaded into the system. What can I do with that? I can install it. Once installed, I can immediately run it. The trick is, I don't have to run it from the cartridge anymore. I can run it directly from my internal game. And yes, it loads and runs just like the actual thing did. Which, to be fair, like if you were an anime fan in the 80s and you don't recognize this game, this thing was a legend in certain circles online because someone actually went through the trouble of making a Sailor Moon themed beat 'em up. Of all things in the universe, why? The funny thing is, it's actually really good. Like, it's stupid how good it was. Whoever developed it put a lot of effort and time into making it a decent game. But that's not the point I'm trying to make. This works. It functions. And at the drop of a hat, I can bounce out, pull the cartridge, which easily releases. It's not super hardcore wedged in there or nothing. But then, once I've done that, I can grab the next item in my collection, or the next item in my collection, or the next item in my collection. One by one, unit by unit, piece by piece, down the line. What do I have? I have Super Nintendo. I have Super Famicom. As a demonstration, I have another Super Famicom game. I pop it into the system. The system reads it. It'll resolve using database if it's something it doesn't match. Or if it's not reading the disk, I can immediately pop it back out. The system reverts back to where it was. I pop it back in and the system scans. Now, because I mounted it properly, recognizes it immediately. This thing works almost flawlessly. As long as you insert the cartridge correctly, the system will load it and you can immediately go about your business. And the thing is, with the PlayStation games, it takes, I don't know, about 4 minutes sometimes to do a proper installation. It's fast, it's pretty straightforward, but it does take a minute. But with the cartridge-based games, it's a matter of seconds because they're so relatively small comparatively. So, let's get my next one in. I load my next one. Dragon Ball Z, Super Gokuden. It knows it immediately. And that's the thing. This thing is connected to a database of every game ever made for every system it supports. So it knows instinctively any game I put in. Now, I'm going to load an actual American Super Nintendo game. Reads the record, checks the file. Final Fight 3. Boom. And it even allows you to identify which region it's from. In my case, I have the North American version. I add it to the collection and install it. Done. Simple, quick, efficient. And the thing is, you have the central controller, which is sort of a sort of generic PlayStation style controller, and it will run everything. But there is actually, if you want, a dedicated Super Nintendo controller that you can use. So let's say you want to add a controller can go into controllers, connect the controller, hold right on the D-pad to register. Boom. And now that controller is in play. And I can use that controller to control the games. For the record, the Super Nintendo controller for the Polymega is solid. But what's amazing about this is this thing's universal. It can play everything. Everything that can support that particular platform. For example, the SNES controller can do NES games, or it can do Super Nintendo games. But this is all under one platform. On the other hand, I'm right now no longer using my PlayStation controller because it is no longer active. It's in standby mode. So you can swap back and forth, and each controller works just fine. Or you can just revert back to home base and go back about your business. It works surprisingly well. Just depends on what you're using. But if you're like me, I prefer the PlayStation controls. Done. And I go right back to it, and it works. No battle, no question, no nothing. See? Now that this is done, I can literally remove the cartridge. You don't even have to eject because the cartridge slot is not locked, so it does not actually require you to eject it. You just click and go. And what makes this thing so good is that it is not something that requires you to have any special equipment to use. Like, it is not some fancy specialty gear. It is just it's essentially a Super Nintendo that just clacks on to the Polymega, and it works phenomenally. So let's go ahead and throw a couple more games on here as a demonstration, and then we'll go from there. Actually, I have 2 copies of Fun Fight 2. In the process of also pruning my collection a little bit because I have so many games, and I found out I have quite a few replicas, so I don't need. So some of these I can just disperse with. But we'll check it out. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Turtles in Time. Install. Yes. Done. And now let's run it. Test it out. See how it looks. Honestly, super. I do have the remastered version of this, and I also have like the Cowabunga version. I've got all kinds of different variants of this game, so this is just my actual physical hard copy. But for people looking for a way to organize and collect all their games together on one platform, Polymega may be the best option in the system. And then, boom, way to go. It is notable that the game plays the controller you're using, but what's also notable is that the buttons will always be set up the way the original console was. So to start the game, you still have to hit the start button. Unlike modern games where you'll hit any button, this one you have to hit the start button. So,
Big Apple, 3 a.m.
Boy, is this a nostalgia trip and a half. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's that nostalgia pack hitting hard right now. I'm telling you, like this is my late '90s arcade memories flooding my brain. God, I love this game so much. Me and my buddies used to play this obsessively forever. Along with the original, like, I actually had the original Nintendo game for the arcade game, which you can now get that on the California collection if you're looking to get like a PC collection or version. But there's just something about having the actual original deal on hand that feels so good. But as you can see, and here, it completely and totally recreates the experience for any system it uses, because it's using the real hardware. This isn't emulation. This isn't, well, technically it's emulation, but this isn't just loading ROM files or anything in the game. This is running real original hard files from the cartridge on a platform that supports them. And that's why I think Polymega is such a cool piece of tech, is that, yes, it is pricey, and yes, it's a bit expensive, but if you're looking for the original, authentic deal, this is where you come. And again, one of the coolest things about this is, once you install it, you don't have to put the disc back in. You can literally load it right from the main system, because it's installed into the memory. In my case, I'm running an NVMe SSD, 2 terabyte. And believe me, depending upon what you're loading, that is more than enough space for an entire collection and then some. But as you can see, if I wanted to, I could run the game right here. Instantaneously loads from my main memory, and then I can leave when I'm ready. And that's the thing. Like, this is not some restrictive, limited platform. I'd say it has a 95 plus compatibility rating. Like 95% of the games in the system are compatible with it. So like if I have a huge collection, I can, if I want, install the entire collection to the system and then just play it straight from that platform. No issue, no conflict, no compatibility issues or battles. And then as soon as I'm done installing one, I can pop out the previous cartridge, slide it back into my case, pop in the next one. Doesn't matter if it's Super Nintendo, Famicom, whatever. I can pop it, load it, install it, and then move on. And yes, there was a point where I was collecting every anime game I could get my blasted hands on. I'm aware. What can I say? I had a bit of a obsession at one point. Anyway, as you can see, this platform is multifunctional. The way it works, and I don't have a picture of one I could load up, but basically, if you go to a website, you'll see how it works. There's a base station that acts for the CD-ROM based games, everything up to the PlayStation era. Nothing like PlayStation 2, no 3DO, no Xbox, which honestly I'm disappointed that, because the Xbox, I would have loved this thing to have Xbox compatibility. It should, but I guess it was a licensing issue, Microsoft being Microsoft, But what they were able to do, as you can see from the collection I have here is PlayStation, NES, SNES, Sega CD, Saturn, Neo Geo CD, and TurboGrafx 16, which I do have the TurboGrafx 16 adapter as well. And then I have a Neo Geo CD adapter. It's the base unit. I have the Saturn, which is the base unit. I have the PlayStation, which is the base unit. I have the Sega CD, which is the base unit. It even goes as far as to give you full documentation lists as to every game that the system currently has support for to some level. It's not always universal. Like the system is not without its flaws. But everything here I have that somewhere. I need to dig it out. But everything you see here is at some level compatible. They even have a light gun that's compatible with this thing. And then there's the SAS module, which you've seen. And then there's an NAS module, which I don't have at the moment, but it does exist. But essentially, every game I have at the moment was installed exactly the same. I popped in the disc, or I popped in the compatible cartridge. I add it to the collection. I install it. It's installed in moments. For the cartridges, it's almost instantaneous. For the, like I said, for the CD games, depends on how much data, but typically no more than 3 or 4 minutes. Sometimes some of the larger games can take about 5 or 6 minutes. But now, Super Off-Road's in, start new game. Off we go. We're ready to roll. And it loads immediately. Good old software creation. When I was a kid, this game was like the insane, just super cool racing game. You get to, as you can see here, it runs almost flawlessly. I'd say for a system that's supposed to be running emulation, it's running pretty well. It doesn't change the fact that it's still kind of shit. I love this game. When I was younger, I was actually speaking on it. Nowadays, I do not have the reflexes. No, it's clear as day, but it's still an amazing fun game. I don't know how. It's still making the actual game is a lot of fun. You can definitely make it work. But yeah, like I said, it runs perfectly flawless. It runs completely in-house, and you don't have to keep the disc or the cartridge in the slot. You can just literally install it to the main system, park it, and then once you're done, you pop the cartridge back into whatever storage you're using for it, and move on. And you can just keep going and going and going. And for the cartridge-based games, literally speaking, for the cartridge-based games, this system's onboard memory would probably be okay. But I do recommend getting external storage, NVMe. And no matter what, if you're going to do the external storage, mount it properly. Having it loose in the system will cause problems. I tested that. Make sure it's mounted and bolted down correctly. Once it's bolted down and secured, the system runs almost flawlessly. I've not had a single problem with it. I'm fighting for freedom. God. So many people don't know this, but this game is actually based on this weird arcade game. I know people have seen that thing where you punch in and it measures your strength, right? Well, there was a game like that called Sonic Blastman, where like your punches determined how much damage you did to the target. And it started with just a random mugger, and then it got to like giant crab and huge spaceship or something. I forget the. It's been a while since I've played the arcade machine, but Nintendo actually had. I guess they had a contract or had a publishing deal with the company that made that, and they, I guess, beat 'em ups were the thing at the time. They were super huge. And they made this. And it's a really solid beat 'em up. It's not without its quirks or flaws. Like definitely feels like it's trying too much to be a Final Fight copy. But it feels so good. Oh, there we go. I've forgotten how to do the pickups in this game. But yeah, like there is a definite problem with like the game's hit detection at times and its range. Like eventually, like higher levels, you just wind up doing nothing but throws because they clear out enemies so much faster. But the thing I want to demonstrate is this:
I'm fighting for freedom.
100 megaton punch. I know. That's nothing. It's not actually like that. The city would be in ruins, but God, that is nostalgia punching me like you wouldn't believe right now. But that's the thing. Like the whole thing about these games is one of the reasons I'm doing this is preservation, because so many games are being lost to history, just like so many movies in the past were lost to history. There was a report from the Movie Preservation Society that somewhere between 40 to 60% of movies made before a certain time frame are gone now, just disappeared, no longer anywhere to be found. They just vanished off the face of the earth, and that is an absolute tragedy. That we are at a point where so many of these movies that were once these well-known, well-loved, well-documented classics are gone because nobody bothered to preserve them. And that will happen to comics, that will happen to video games, that will happen to all of media if we don't take actual action to, move forward with it. And I think things like the Polymega, which allow us to preserve the original hardware in a more efficient and more functional package, are absolutely fantastic. Like here, Phalanx. I have a copy of Phalanx. You have any idea how hard it is to find one of those anymore? It's one of the best games with some of the silliest box art you will ever see. Seriously, go look up the US box art for that game. It's an old dude with a banjo with a spaceship flying in the background. No one ever figured out why. That's just what it was. And I mean, I wish I was joking, but that's what it was. But here's the thing. Phalanx is a very hard game to find. And it's almost all down to the fact that the game itself was a bit of a novelty. It was very much an oddity. And now it's like you try to find a copy of it anywhere in the world, it's non-existent almost. So yeah, that's one of those things. Like a lot of games are going to disappear from the world unless we start taking action, and I think the Polymega is a good way to do that. There was also something like Palmer Luckey, the guy who did like Oculus or something. He recently announced a proper Game Boy, like an original Game Boy with full color and everything else, that plays the original cartridges. I forget the name of it. And I made the argument, like, why bother? Just get an SP or get an Advance. Someone pointed out, have you seen the prices for that? And they make a good point. The cost on those is going through the roof. There needs to be an effort. We need to make sure we preserve these games. So I'm very much backing this kind of stuff because I think it's important. That being said, I do think the Polymega, while a functional and viable platform, has its flaws. Particularly, I learned this the hard way. Trying to mount the NVMe, I discovered that the screw that's supposed to be used to bolt it down is so tightly installed that it's almost impossible to remove with any standard set of screwdrivers, even power tools. To get it out, I had to get a screw stripper. I had to get a screw removal tool. That's how intensely installed that was. Now, once I got it out, mounted the NVMe and remounted it, it was fine. But the fact that it was so tightly installed that I needed special equipment to do it is a manufacturing problem. And I think that kind of thing is usually what you see with these new technologies, is that the bigger points work fine. It's the finer details that wind up getting left on the roadside. Still, once properly installed, the system runs like fucking clockwork. Beautiful. Pardon me. I live in a very hot area and it's very dry, and I am currently just absolutely having a freaking breakdown trying to maintain my internal and consistent, hydration, because right now we finally hitting the point in my town where we would usually have expected to be about a month ago. We're way past 100 now. We're hitting almost a 110, and that is like at this point I am so beyond done with the heat that I am drinking so much water these days. So call it what you will. Like it is what it is. But if you live in a hot area, hydrate. So anyway, I just wanted to go over and do a quick overview of this. Wound up being not so quick, but as you can see, if you're a collector, especially if you're looking to collect retro games, but you don't want to have 20 different consoles in your house, I highly recommend the Polymega. Start with the base unit, and then pick the modules that you need for your collection. Genesis, Nintendo, Super Nintendo. I even have the TurboGrafx-16 one. They easily disconnect so long as there's no other technical issues like bad NVMe mounting. You can turn off the power, press a button, disconnect the module, connect the new one, and be ready to go in minutes. My only other complaint about the Polymega is that it has a bit of a slow load time, usually about 3 to 4 minutes to boot up from a cold start. But that's not a deal breaker, and it shouldn't be. You can just leave it ring in the background while you do other things, and once it boots up, you're good to go and can just do everything you need to until you're done. But definitely check it out if you're looking to get into collecting or if you're looking to get into retro gaming. It isn't cheap. I'll be the first to admit the base units are expensive. They're fully featured. They cover like 10 different games or 10 different platforms, but they aren't cheap. The additional modules, they're relatively speaking within the same price range you'd pay for the console itself. Having everything in one bucket, though, is a miracle, and it makes things so much simpler, as you've seen. Either way, I'm going to continue installing my collection into my now fully functional Polymega, but I might do some retro game stuff down the road as I get this thing more filled out and stocked with software. But if you like what you see, definitely check out Polymega. I think it's worth looking into. Either way, this is Matt, the solo gamer, and I greatly appreciate anyone who actually decides to watch this. Otherwise, I will see you next time, probably with some more Helldivers, or maybe with some more Mass Effect. Who knows? We're coming up to one of my favorite parts of the Mass Effect story, which is the Mass Effect 3 Geth Quarian conflict. So, anyway, I will see you guys later. Matt out.